person beside you.
Again, on behalf of the Kankakee County branch of the NAACP, we'd like to thank everyone for attending the 79th State Representative Candidates Forum. And earlier this evening, we're going to have Ms. Charlene Eve would start with the opening statement. Each candidate have a 2-minute opening closing statement, questions from the panelists and questions that will be taken from the audience. Each candidate would have 1 minute to respond. The moderator and the timer will be designated, which is designated by the NAACP. The moderator has the final authority in all matters of time limit. So with that, we're going to start with the 2-minute opening statement with Charlene Eve. Before that, we'd like to thank Mr. Steve Bertrand, the library director of the Kankakee Public Library. So again, we'd like to thank him and his staff. So we're going to start with Ms. Charlene Eve with her 2-minute opening statement.
Good evening. I would like to thank the NAACP for putting on this event and to everyone for attending tonight. I'm not a politician. You will not hear catchy sound bites from me. I am a genuine community activist. As a social worker, I'm trained to listen, which I do very well. I'm also a fighter for justice for everyone. My twin sister and I attended Olivet Nazarene University. I received my bachelor's degree from there and went on to get my master's in social work from Governor State. During this time, I fell in love with this community and the people here. However, I also saw the many unmet needs in our community. I got married and I'm raising my daughter. I recently decided I could do more to help by serving as an elected public official. If I become your state representative, I will listen to the needs of everyone in the community. I will work very hard to bring the concerns and needs of our areas to all the legislators in Springfield and to the Pritzker administration. I want to bring this area its fair share of infrastructure projects and related good-paying jobs. We need to fast-track the interchange work at Exit 312 to spur developments on the east side of Kankakee. I want to bring more fundings to our schools and to stop the over-reliance of property taxes. I want to bring all the stakeholders together to start the process on saving the Kankakee River. The river is a life source for our drinking water, a beautiful asset to our community and a source for tourism. We must restore full funding for the state park. The campgrounds bring about $40 million to the state and benefits for local businesses. We must also include funding for mental health and substance abuse. Approximately 55% of people with mental illnesses go untreated. And we must find a way to put a cap on the cost of life-saving medications. We must also tackle, as Democrats, the subject of solar renewable energy and clean energy production to help push the passage of renewable energy bill in the General Assembly. I am more than ready to serve all the people of the 79th District. Thank you.
Mr. Snipes.
First, giving honor to God and His Son and my Savior, Jesus the Christ, to the NAACP for hosting this forum, to the engaging participants, and to the audience of concerned citizens, and to all it takes to make this sitting. I'm Robert Ellington Snipes, a member of the Kankakee County Board representing District 18, but that's not why I'm here tonight. I want to earn your vote to represent you as the 79th District State Representative. I am the only candidate that has not accepted any PAC dollars, nor am I committed to any purse strings except for the people of the 79th District. This evening I want to make one thing clear. This race is not about me. This race is about us, our values, and our concerns. I have established the nitty-gritty Grapevine Committee for the purpose of allowing the people and businesses of the 79th District to share and vent valuable information to elected and appointed officials to enhance the quality of life in our district. In essence, I need you to be my ears and my eyes in this political process. The 79th District doesn't need political rhetoric that demoralizes the intellectual consciousness with nostrums and pablums. We need serious candidates with an agenda to address the maladies that exist within our respective communities. Whether you live in Herschel or Hoskin Park, Mantino or Moments, Bradley or Bobonis, Iroquois, Grundy, or Will County, or anywhere within the 79th District, we share common interests of quality education for our children and their posterities, livable wage jobs, affordable daycare, affordable health care, adequate public safety, and some immediate relief from student loans that cradles and cripples our college students after graduation. We can either unite our votes behind a candidate that has an extensive record of fighting for the people, or you can continue to cry and complain without resolve. I am the candidate on the ballot, but this forum is not about me. It's about we, the people of the 79th District. Will you join me as I fight for the future of the 79th District? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Snipes. You have the first question. Can we just hold our applause? You have the first question. The question is coming from Mr. Wills.
Thank you. As trade schools become more of a trend in today's youth, can you ensure that trade schools like KACC keep their doors open due to lack of budget from the state?
I would do everything within my power to keep not only the colleges running, but the vocational schools, which we urgently need, because many of our children have opted out of just going to college because of the fear of the high tuition and also the loans that they have to get in order to subsidize their college education. So vocational training, our plumbers, our electricians, our carpenters are more welcome. I believe that if anything, we need to strengthen that. We need to strengthen the schools. We have the Kankakee Career Center, but that's not enough. We have the schools at KCC. I would like to see more of those vocational institutions recreated in our schools. They were there when I was going to school, and I see a lot of gentlemen and ladies that have made a career out of it. Thank you.
Mrs. Eve.
I also believe in trade schools. Not everybody is cut out to go to college. We need to expose young people to the career possibility of trades. These are good paying jobs with benefits. We need to make sure that we teach them the skills they need, especially math. KCC and others are doing a great job with trade programs, and I would like to see these efforts expanded.
Thank you. Mr. Rubel, you have the question, and it goes to Mrs. Eve.
What is the biggest problem facing the 79th District, and why?
One of the biggest problems facing the 79 districts is property taxes increase. What we need to do to alleviate the property tax increase is to, I think I'm all for the fair tax. So what we need to do to alleviate the property taxes is hopefully the fair tax will pass on the ballot, and that when the wealthy people pay more of their share of taxes, they would be able to fund some of the education to alleviate the property taxes. So that's one of the biggest problems I think is facing the 79 district is property increases in property taxes.
Mr. Snipes.
I think there's three issues that mirrors the state of Illinois, and the first is population growth. The second is stagnant businesses and employment opportunities. And number three is the skyrocketing property taxes. It has been said that there's an exodus of about 640,000 people and their pocketbooks leaving the state of Illinois. That's a significant number of people and potential lost revenue. Something has to be done to restore the images of the state of Illinois and the stagnant businesses. While the heart of Illinois are the people of Illinois, without question, the heartbeat of Illinois are its small businesses. What's the diagnosis? A tax climate and culture that embraces small businesses and that will ultimately create jobs where there are few strides in this area. A tremendous jumpstart is needed in Illinois. And with the skyrocketing property taxes, most of your local problems, such as homelessness, youth programs, local charities, was at an all-time low when people were working and when people had property taxes abated.
Thank you, Mr. Snipes. Ms. Delabray, you have the question, and it goes to Mr. Snipes.
Mr. Snipes, what is your position on ICE detainees in Kankakee County?
ICE detainees is a part of the Homeland Security. We do a service to the United States and to our country when we basically house so they don't have to build additional structures. In Kankakee County, the ICE detainees here, there is a policy that's about this big for the ICE detainees and about this big for if we would just arrest some individual right off the street. So therefore, the regulations are higher, and I applaud the correction officers, and I also applaud the staff that basically attend to these individuals. So my position is, as doing a service to the United States government of individuals that are coming into the country illegally. If something was to happen like 911, we would have an explosion going on with the people saying, why didn't you protect us? So they do have a due process through the federal government. We don't arrest them. They bring them to us. We simply house them.
Mrs. Eves.
Well, ICE detainees practices in Kankakee County is not something that I fully support because my Christian values doesn't allow me to support practices that separate families from their, or mothers from their children, or fathers from their children. So I'm not really all for the ICE detainees in Kankakee County.
Mr. Wills, you have the question. It goes to Mrs. Eves.
Do you support fire departments asking their local governments to raise taxes to help run their departments, seeing that they are being forced to increase their pay wages?
Yes, I do, because I believe that firefighters do a lot for the communities. Without firefighters, even though it doesn't seem that like they do a whole lot for the communities. I mean, your cat can be missing, and a firefighter would help save your cat, and they do a lot, so I do support that, yes.
Hey, repeat that question so that I can understand exactly what you conveyed.
So do you support many fire departments asking local governments to raise taxes to help run their departments, seeing that the state has required them to raise their pay wages?
I don't know if the state has really required them to raise their pay rates, but they do fall upon the purview of their respective municipalities and villages, those that afford them. Some have volunteer firefighters, and City of Kankakee is one that has paid firefighters. Many times they work together. They have unions that represent them. I think that's more of a local issue than a state issue. We have the state fire marshal, but in everyone's respective community, they would then know what taxes they can afford and what they can pay and what they can hire. So I would leave that to the respective municipalities, villages, and townships.
Thank you, Mr. Snipes. We have one question from the audience before we get to Mr. Rubel. The question is, should you become the Democratic nominee, your opponent in the general election will be Jackie Haas. What do you know about Ms. Haas and her political stance, and how would you distinguish yourself from her in the general election?
I know Jackie Haas. She's the ED of the Helen Weller Foundation. She also serves with me. She's an appointed member of the Kankakee County Board. As to her positions, I would probably suggest that you inquire of her. What distinguishes me is I have a longer serving record. I've been in the community a lot longer. I have done more volunteer hours than I think any other politician that's out. I would caution the person when they say they are not a politician. If you are an electrician and you're working in the electrical field and say I'm not an electrician, you will probably meet with some resistance. I don't want to be a politician, but a politician, yes, I will be.
Mrs. Eve.
Well, I know with Jackie Haas, we are both mental health advocates, and that mental health is dear to my heart because I work at Shapiro Developmental Center. So I know that we have similarities, but as far as differences, she's a Republican and I'm a Democrat. That's a vast difference. That's a big difference.
Right.
I believe in funding for public services. I don't know where she stands on that, but I believe in public aid system, and I believe in the Medicare and Medicaid system.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rubel, question to Mrs. Eve.
over the last 8 years, with the exception of 3 counties in the state, all counties have declined in population. I believe Kankakee County is down about 3,500 people. If elected, how would you address this population decline?
I will try to bring jobs back to the 79th district. Well, I would also work with the Economic Alliance. Also, I will try to, I'm all for the Kankakee Airport, not the Kankakee Airport, the South Suburban Airport. So I would advocate for jobs from the South Suburban Airport to bring that to Kankakee, and hopefully that will increase the population of people will come to live in Kankakee with the South Suburban Airport. That's what they're about to do the project of the South Suburban Airport. So,
Mr. Snipes.
Is your question because of the decrease what we would do to increase the population?
Yes.
I think there's a lot of things that can be done to increase the population. Kankakee went from 102 to 112,000 individuals. There's a population shift from the city of Kankakee to other areas in Kankakee County. So the population shift doesn't say that we're losing in Kankakee. It just says they're moving from one entity to another, one city, one municipality or township to another. That, for the most part, is good. You have Nucor Steel, you have CSL Barron, you have Sun Chemical, you have Penderhas. You have a lot of industrial steel left in Kankakee County, and people are coming back to Kankakee County to work. The issue is they are coming to work. Now we have to appeal to allow them to come and reside here so that taxes are spent here in Kankakee County. The way we do that is we continue to build trust.
Ms. Delabray, you have the question, and it's to Mr. Snipes.
Mr. Snipes, how do you feel about gerrymandering at the state?
How do I feel about gerrymandering?
Right.
I don't particularly care for it. Again, are you speaking of the state gerrymandering? Are you speaking of local gerrymandering? What more
state.
specific? The state. We're coming up to a point of redistricting in the state of Illinois, and as we all know, those that are in control tends to make the rules. I look for a more fair base. However, I have 117 other House of Representatives that you have to deal with, and you have to deal with 59 senators that make that decision. My personal decision is, or my personal perspective is, I'm not for gerrymandering. I'm more for a fair process when we're looking at the population and also how those lines are drawn.
Ms. Aziz.
Well, I believe gerrymandering is an unfair process because usually when the party it's in power kind of draws the map to favor them. So I think it's a very unfair process. I believe that with gerrymandering, we need an independent commission, probably from the federal government, to step in with gerrymandering because it's an unfair process. Personally, I'm not for gerrymandering, no.
Before we go to Mr. Wills, again to the audience, when you're writing your question, the question has to be written in a manner that it could be asked to both of the respective candidates. So again, be mindful when you're writing your question. A question can't be pointed to one of the candidates. It has to be written in a manner that it can be responded by both of them. Mr. Wills, you have the next question, and it's to Ms. Eves.
How would you address the pension issue?
You mean in the state of Illinois?
For pensions, yes.
Well, with the pension crisis, I believe that the problem was not created by public employees. people believe it was, but it wasn't created by public employees and teachers. It was created actually by politicians that did not make their required payments with the state of Illinois. What can legally be done with benefits has been done already. The Illinois Supreme Court ruled that benefits of current employees not be diminished. However, the state also started to reduce the Tier 2 pension for employees starting January 2011. There's an option for employees to forego a 3% COLA for cash, which saves the state money. The governor recently signed a bill to consolidate pension funds to reduce administrative costs. The final piece is to re-amortize the pension debts to flatten out payments and not crowd out funding for needed services. I also believe that an employer should honor their binding contract with employees and not meddle with current pensions for any employee, be it public employee or private sector employee. People work hard to pay into their pensions, and they work hard for their pensions. So we don't meddle with pensions. So to deal with the pension crisis, the state has already dealt with that. What I believe we should do is hopefully vote for the fair tax system come 2020. November 2020, and hopefully that can alleviate some.
Thank you, Ms. Eve.
Okay,
Mr. Snipes, you have exactly 22 extra minutes, which Ms. Eve
22
went over.
minutes?
22 seconds, I'm sorry. that would have been too long for you, Robert. I'm sorry. You have a minute and 22 seconds. Ms. Eve, you have to be respectful of time.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Snipes.
The top earner among the 6 systems in the University of Illinois, Chicago Professor Emeritus Tappers gets $504,700. Timothy Tully, $376,500. And John Flows, where he gets $303,400. You heard, you saw in the paper where I decided that I felt that the individuals that are at the top tier, that means those that are making $200,000 or more, should follow the COLA, which is the cost of living adjustment. And the reason so is because the cost of living adjustment will be the 1.7% as that's the current COLA. The 1.3%, if they agree, I will want to be put back into the retirement system for the purpose of bringing down, one, the debt, but number two is so that individuals after us will be able to get a retirement. I'm part of that retirement system, and I would be for anyone that's over the $200,000 bracket. I'm sure you can live off of $250,000, $300,000, $500,000 pretty comfortable without having that extra interest added. But because we do have it in our system, they would have to volunteer. Otherwise, we have to go through a constitutional amendment. But if we could convince them to take a 1.9 and invest the 1.3%, that'll be $2.4 billion.
Thank you, Mr. Snipes. We have to you, Mr. Snipes. We do have a question from the audience. Do you support the elimination of cash bonds and mandatory minimum sentences?
Do I
support the elimination of cash bond and mandatory minimum sentencing individuals dealing with the criminal justice system?
Right, it's like a two-part question. Cash bonds, is that dealing with the county, or are you talking about the state?
We're talking about you running for the state 79th district, Mr. Snipes. So we're talking about which would affect those individuals in the state of Illinois. Yes, sir.
Again, when you're dealing with the state government and the cash bonds, for whatever purpose those cash bonds are for, I would have to look at them. Actually, you can't make a unilateral decision based upon an open-ended question that doesn't actually directly target where these cash bonds are coming for and what they are for. For the second part, you're saying, do I support a reduction in sentencing? Again, that's a question with a variable answer. If someone has killed someone, murdered someone's family, no. If you're saying for like nonviolent offenders, yes. So without having additional information, I would have to just give a generalization, just to simply say yes in part and no in part on the reduction.
Ms. Eve, you're going to have some additional time. The reason I think the question was written is because last month or in January, the governor and the lieutenant governor proposed this as a part of their criminal justice reform.
I absolutely support it. I support cash bail because there are people languishing in the jail system and they don't have money to bail out. So it creates a disparity between the rich and the poor. I mean, rich people can go to jail and they're out the same day. So yes, I absolutely support the end of the cash bail. And then as far as the minimum mandatory sentence goes, I do support it for nonviolent crimes.
Right. Thank you. Mr. Rubel, you have the next question and questions to Mrs. Eve.
If elected, how would you help to better the county and state roads and sewer system, especially lessening the flooding of roads and highways in our area?
I'll try to advocate for funding. Well, we already have funding for the infrastructure. You said infrastructure too, right?
I didn't mention that, but certainly you
Okay.
could include that.
Okay. We also have funding for infrastructure from IDOT. But yes, I'll try to get funding, especially for the areas in Pembroke. They lack resources of the sewer resources. And so I'll try to get funding to help the places that lack resources, like the sewer resources. And I'll try to get funding from them. Most of the times, Pembroke is left out of the funding from the state. So I'll try to advocate to get funding to help the 79 district that lacks resources like that.
Mrs. Snipes.
Okay. Before I ask a question, I thought you said cash bond, but you referred to it as cash bail. That's something different. Now, what was the question?
If elected, how would you help to better the county and state roads and sewer system, especially lessening the flooding on area roads and highways?
Governor Pritzker has already raised the gas tax by 19 cents. So that means that's your motor fuel tax that goes to deal with your roads. So matter of fact, all of Illinois should be seeing improvements in their roads because that's like a double tax, which means a double amount of the work is going to be done in areas. That's going to put people to work in the whole 9 yards. That money comes to your individual cities and townships, so they're going to have more of a say as to how those are implemented. But on the state roads or the state highways, where we have more of control, I trust IDOT and NUT to have done the necessary studies and engineering where those roads are. As you see now, most of them are being repaired, upgraded, and you'll see a lot more coming this summer all the way through the fall through next year.
Thank you. Ms. Delabray, you have the next question to Mr. Snipes.
Mr. Snipes, what's your position on the Kankakee River Conservancy referendum question?
I understand the tax is going to be going to the individuals that's on each side of the river. It's for the betterment of the river. There's a lot of talk about the river walkway and things of this nature. In fact, they're asking the state to put in monies as far as that's concerned. When it comes to the tax of the people, they will be asking that question on the ballot, which is more appropriate. I believe the people that are being affected, they should be the ones that determine whether they want to be taxed or not for that to happen. And if they want to make it happen, I'll be more than glad to work with them. If they don't, then we have to look for other alternatives.
Mrs. Eve.
Well, the solution to saving the Kankakee River is for Illinois, Indiana, and the federal government and local governments to come together on a doable census plan. There is a need to be a reliable revenue stream from each source. Understanding getting Indiana to contribute is kind of difficult. I do not support the current ballot initiative because it raises the property taxes on certain homeowners and could also affect renters simply because they live within 2 distance of the river. And I think it's an unfair tax. But we do need to do something about our river, though, because we really need to do, because down the road, it will come back and bite us if we don't do something about our river. But I think that the ballot initiative proposed by the Conservative District is unfair. I don't think that we should put all the tax burden on homeowners that live within 2 miles of the Kankakee River. I think it's unfair.
Mr. Wills, you have the next question is to Mrs. Eves.
Recently, the state passed a law to raise the legal age limit from 18 to 21, but vaping is still an issue. How can we combat these issues?
Yeah, vaping, I think, is going to kill people faster than smoking will kill people. There's research on vaping saying that people are dying within 5 to 7 years. But we should try to propose laws that eliminates maybe vaping with flavor vaping. We should also try to teach our kids or train our kids that vaping is dangerous for you. We should have advertisements that show how dangerous vaping is to the public, because it's an issue, and it's killing people.
Mrs. Snipes.
I would support anything that deters an individual from doing the vaping, because it's not so much of the vaping that's causing the problem. If you vape cigarette smoke or cigar smoke, you're just vaping it through through a little system. But it's what's in that fentanyl, a lot of other things that's causing them to. They're trying things. They want to get as close to death as possible, and yet come back to life. And kids will be kids. So as a result, it wouldn't make a difference where you take the age limit to. Kids are going to find, if it's in their homes, if it's in their parents' home, they're going to find a way to basically do it. It's illegal. We don't want it to happen, but it is happening. I'm an environmentalist, so I don't like smoke in my atmosphere, period. I don't like vaping in my atmosphere. But I share this world with others.
Ms. Delabray, you have the next question, and it's to Mr. Snipes. I'm sorry, Mr. Rubel. I'm sorry.
If elected, what specific plan do you have to create jobs here in the district?
When elected, I would just support the tiers that's already in place. The problem is the transition. We have to get individuals to that had limited training in certain jobs to now at least go to college and take, you don't have to get a degree, but you do have to go in and take maybe a couple of biology courses or something, like to go into like CSL bearing, or that. In Kankakee, we were applauded for creating the most jobs. So it's not the jobs, it's getting individuals transitioned into those jobs. That's the problem. So we have the workforce in place. Even if you don't have the money, they will help you with the tuition and even with transportation. What more can we do other than to go to your door, knock up on it and say, will you please come out? We can't beg the folks, but if they want jobs, jobs are readily available. You just got to do a little bit more training. And
Mrs. Eve.
Well, I think the area has a lot of resources that are being underutilized. There's no reason why the east side of Kankakee is still waiting for changes at the exit on 312. IDOT has received approximately about $23 billion for roads and bridges construction. We need to earmark those funds to help with the exit 312. And then also, the people of Pembroke do not need any more promises about getting basic utilities in their areas. Let's get funding in the state budget for the people of Pembroke. I will also listen to ideas from the area leaders and businesses to try to build consensus on priorities in this area.
Thank you. Ms. Delabray, question to Mrs. Eve.
Yes, can you tell me what your position on gun control is?
I'm for gun control for repeat offenders. That's my position on it.
I believe in the Second Amendment right to bear arms, but to responsible parties. The parties that we're regulating are really not the individuals that need to be regulated. What needs to be regulated is the backstreet market, or what they call the black street market, where these individuals are getting guns either from out of state or wherever they're getting them from. Those are the individuals that need to be targeted and need to be stopped. Those are the ones that are irresponsible with the guns. Anyone that has been through a domestic violence, we already have it in place that they cannot carry a gun for the rest of their lives. But again, the people that when you're dealing with drug trafficking, you're dealing with individuals that gangs that's dealing with those particular guns, we have to look at how do we stop those individuals from the misuse. They're the ones that's shooting. They're the ones that's causing.
Thank you, Mr. Snipes. Question from the audience. What is your position on Governor Pritzker's proposed graduated income tax? Please explain.
It goes to me first.
Yes, sir.
I have mixed feelings with I understand what Governor Pritzker is trying to do, and I would like to say yes. However, I would say yes if anyone can raise their hands to tell me how that graduated tax is going to affect them. They're asking us to change an amendment to the Constitution. When you ask us to change the amendment to the Constitution, you better know what you're getting and just not looking to, it's saying a fair tax on the upper, I think 200,000 or better. The problem with that is if they are able to get a good accounting to shift the taxes or take them out of the state of Illinois and put them in Indiana someplace else and still do business in Illinois, what does it serve? What actually will this fair, we call it the fair tax, but I need to make sure it's fair, and I have not seen it in its entirety to determine how it would be so fair to the working class.
Thank you. Mrs. Eve.
Well, right now we pay a flat tax rate of 4.5, I believe is 4.5%. And I think that's unfair. So I do support the fair tax amendment, which is supposed to be proposed on the ballot in 2020. And I do hope people vote for it because the fair tax amendment will make the wealthy pay their fair share of taxes. Right now, the wealthiest, those making $250,000 or more, are paying very minimal or little in federal taxes. So if the governor is saying that they should pay their fair share of taxes, I absolutely support it. Because if they don't do that, the tax burden is going to fall on the middle class and the poor. I mean, we should just do the math. If we don't vote for the fair tax amendment, the tax burden, because the wealthiest do not pay in federal taxes, will fall on the middle class and the poor. And funding for social services will definitely be cut. So yes, I do support it.
Thank you. Before we go to Mr. Wills, Ms. Eve, is a question from the audience. How important is the upcoming 2020 census to our district? How will we support counting each person?
Me?
Yes.
Well, it's very, very important, the upcoming 2020 census, because that allows us to get funding from different sources. We need to try to get Mexicans and minorities and especially legal immigrants, we need to try to get them within the census or into the count of the census because they will help with the numbers. But yeah, that's our biggest problem with the census, is trying to get the immigrants within the count of the census.
Mr. Snipes.
The census is very important because of the number of dollars that you will get from the federal government coming back to your respective communities. However, with that being said, there's a population growth. African Americans used to be the number one minority. Right now, outside of white women, they are considered a minority, but outside of that, they were the number one. We're now number two. The Hispanics are number one as far as the minorities. What we need to do is we need to continue to make it safe, again, for them to feel safe enough with a lot of the disturbance that's going on in the United States, that their vote, that they could be part of the census process. I was at a meeting where we discussed that, and I believe that the census individuals have placed safeguards in that will be shared with the individuals that are out there with the census, to share with them that it is safe for them to be counted.
Thank you. Mr. Wills, you'll have the questions to Mr. Snipes.
Illinois politics has a national reputation for corruption and overwrite cases, like recently pardoned former Governor Blagojevich, and more subtle cases like the consolidation of power under Speaker Madigan. How would you act to improve our state government reputation, and what obstacles would you expect to face in these efforts?
I talked with Mr. Madigan, and there was a lot of things that we didn't share in common, and that's why I did not take PAC monies and things of that nature for this particular thing. One is because you want to, one, be your own person. Number two, there are some good decisions that come out of Illinois, and it's clouded by this corruption. Illinois is not corrupt. The people that are in power that corrupt Illinois brings the shadow on Illinois. The state of Illinois is a state that I believe is a great state. It has a great history. It has a great people. The issue is the people have to elect. Who is putting Madigan back in power? The people are, and apparently he must be taking care of his community. I'm representing the 79th District. I will be that voice from the 79th District on that General Assembly floor. My job is to make sure that the 79th District is taken care of. My power is not getting rid of Madigan, because that's up to his constituents.
Ms. Eve.
I have a very short answer for it. I'm all for ethic reforms and accountability.
Mr. Rubin, the questions to Mrs. Eve.
Which people or organizations have made the largest donations to your campaign, and what do these donations say about your reputation and priorities?
Well, I have individual donations. I've had individual donations. I've had donations from the unions. I'm a union person, so I'm all for unions. I'm all for union pensions. I'm all for protecting unions. So if they donate to me, that's a good thing. So yeah, so far I've gotten donations from the unions and from individual donations.
Mr. Snipes.
Again, I didn't take any PAC money, so all of my donations come from the people. Those are the people that I'll be serving. So I'm not tied to any political machine. I am a union person. I'm past president 3 times, vice president of it now. Believe in it, but at the same time, don't want to be controlled by it. So the little $35 here, the little $100 there that comes from the people is what I appreciate, because they are who I have to serve and answer to.
Thank you, Mr. Snipes. You have the next question before we get to Ms. Delabray. Do you support the LGBTQ community?
I support human beings. I don't support causes.
Ms. Eve.
Yes, I do. I don't see why we should not support them. I mean, they're humans too. We should support the LGBT community, because they are also like us. They are humans. I don't see why we shouldn't support them.
Thank you. Ms. Delabray, you have the question to Mrs. Eve.
Mrs. Eads, how will you work with the law enforcement to keep children safe on the streets and keep them in school?
I will work with law enforcement. I will try to get kids in after-school programs. That's the biggest thing, is to get them involved in after-school programs, because research shows that when you get kids involved in after-school programs, they are less likely to be on the streets and do gang activities. So I will work with law enforcement to try to see what we can do for after-school programs for the kids and how they can help with after-school programs.
Mr. Snipes.
Okay. The question was, how will
you work with law enforcement to help keep children off the streets and to stay in school?
I think law enforcement is doing a good job in working with each other. They kind of interrelate. Also, the key element here is also your state's attorney. We have gotten programs in partnership with the YCA through his office for the mentorship. So programs like that, those are effective programs that work. The other thing I would do is restore the $5.1 million in what they call workshop training. That's important because the training aids in the assistance of relationships, not only with the school, but community as well.
Thank you, Mr. Snipes. You have a question. There's another question from the audience. What can Illinois do to improve its elementary and high schools?
What can Illinois do to improve its elementary and high schools?
Yes.
Continue to fund it. The governor has, as we know, has placed $375 million into education, and then there's $50 million for the next 10 years, for $50 million a year for the next 10 years into the educational system. I think he's in the right direction as far as that is concerned. We need to educate. How we educate and where those dollars go to are also important. We need to make sure that those dollars, they are crucial during the first 5 years of a child's life and up through the third grade. If we lose them there, we lose them, and it's hard to recover. So I'm in agreement with his proposal to invest in education and to invest also in the pre-care all the way through the 12th grade.
Ms. Eve.
I'm also all for investing from pre-K all the way to 12th grade. The state constitution requires the state to provide at least 50% of school funding. Its failure to come close has increased our property taxes, and that's what also increases property taxes because the state hasn't come up to that 50% of school funding. But I will try to get funding for these schools to move them into to develop the school system, and I'll also try to get MAP grants. MAP grants will be for college, but yes, I'll try to get funding for the school systems.
Thank you. Mr. Wells, you have the question to Mrs. Eves.
Due to the lack of funding within the state of Illinois, law enforcement has been experiencing a lack of training. They don't have money for their training. And they're also losing different programs that they need to fully function. How do we ensure that within 5 years that these programs will still be functioning well for our law enforcement?
I believe they have a mandate too, is that correct, for the law enforcement? Without the funding?
Without the funding, they can't train all of their
officers. I don't believe in mandates without funding, though, so I will try to advocate for funding for them. Because if they are mandated to do something, they need the funding for it. So yes, I'll do my very best to try to advocate for funding for them.
Mr. Snipes.
The funding was there. $5.1 million was gutted. I will work as the next state representative to reach across the aisles, not only with the sheriffs, both Republican and Democrat, who has taken a stand to have that funding restored, to take an aggressive stand that it is restored. It is critical to the safety of our communities, and we have to put our communities above our politics.
Mr. Rubel, you have the next question, and it goes to Mr. Snipes.
How would you address the extension of the Metro line?
I would love it to come all the way from Chicago. One of the things I liked, I used to pay like $150 to $100 to have my car in a certain lot until when I took a flight. And then I saw the Metro bus for $2, and you can park your car there. That was wonderful for me. So I can adjust my flights and come back. So to have the Metro train to come all the way down to Kankakee, so I can get to Chicago and not have to go through the traffic and the whole 9 yards would be wonderful. So I would support it, yes.
Ms. Delabray, you have the next question.
I definitely will.
sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Charlene.
I definitely will support it.
Thank you. Ms. Delabray, question, and the question is to Ms. Eves.
Ms. Eads, how do you feel about rent controls and affordable housing?
About what controls?
Rent controls and affordable housing?
I'm all for affordable housing and rent controls. There's a problem with housing in Illinois, and we need rent control so people can to alleviate homelessness. So I'm all for the rent control and affordable housing.
Mr. Snipes.
Rent control would then, I mean, we talk about gerrymandering, you'll be redlining when you're dealing with rent control. So I am not really for rent control because I believe that an individual should live wherever they choose to live. However, I am against greed control. That's a difference. But with rent control, there should become responsibilities, taking care of the property as far as not tearing it up and things of this nature. So it has its pros and its cons. I'm not for any rent control. I just believe that there should be a variable and that they need to operate in that variable, and the landlord can then determine whether or not they want to accept it or not accept it.
Mr. Snipes, a question from the audience. Low-income and minority communities experience a striking health disparity and less access to health care and health insurance. These factors put them at a greater risk of HIV and AIDS, diabetes, cancer, asthma, etc. How would you address these health disparities and improve access to quality health care of the minority community?
I believe in health care for the poor and dispossessed, for the working class American that can't get out there and afford. When you're basically stating that the poor don't have health care, a lot of them are on government assistance programs, which has health care provided. You also have clinics that also provide for those individuals who maybe are working but can't afford the health care. In the hospitals, if you have to go to the hospital, there is a philanthropy pool that the hospitals and stuff can pool from to assess your health. Now, if we were talking about getting the medications and things, that's something that's different. So we have to devise a way, and there are some programs out that subsidize those medications. But for the most part, if we're helping working Americans, I'm always saying we need to find a way to stop the greed in the health care system.
Thank you. Mrs. Eves.
I'm all for the expansion of the Medicaid system. Too many people go without health care, especially here in the 79th district. I know of a woman whose husband died because they didn't have health care. People do die because they don't have health care. So I do support the expansion of the Medicaid system.
Thank you. Mr. Wells, you have the next question is to Mrs. Eves.
Do you believe one should have experience for the desired position in order to run for the 79th State District Representative? Why or why not?
I believe you should have a little bit of experience in public service to run for the 79th District. But I believe it's mainly what you stand for. That's what counts, is what you stand for. Because you can be experienced and stand for something that doesn't benefit the community. You can stand for things that will not be beneficial to certain causes. So it's basically what you stand for. It's what counts as to be the next 79th state representative.
Mr. Snipes.
In government, I always say that you need to start at in the local government to gain experience. When you get to Springfield, that's not the time to start gaining experience. At that point, you are in a political fight. And if you don't know how to fight, you will be, your district won't get anything, you won't probably get anything because you don't know how to navigate in government. You have to know how to cross the aisles. You have to know how to word bills, how to read bills to determine whether or not these bills are will enhance or sustain your quality of life. If you get to Springfield and don't know how to do that, if you don't have relationships when you get there, you're fighting an uphill battle. I have them all.
Thank you. We're going to be coming to a next segment of the forum with our closing statement. We'd like to thank our timer for the evening, the branch secretary, Ms. Paulette Crank, our panelists, Mr. President of the Kankakee County Youth Council, Mr. Trent Wills, WVLI radio personality, Mr. Mike Rubel, and the president of the Kankakee County Women's League of Voters, Ms. Ann Delabay. Let's give a hand for them. And also, again, Mr. Steve Bertrand, for the director of the Kankakee Public Library. Ms. Eve, you have the first 2 minutes of opening statement, closing by Mr. Snipes.
Okay. Once again, I would like to thank Theodis and the members of the NAACP for making this event possible. I would also like to thank everyone for taking their time out of your evening to be part of the process. And I would like to thank Robert for joining me in making this a positive campaign. Tonight, we heard of the many challenges facing our community. I know that together we can meet the challenges and give all the people of this district opportunities to move ahead. This district has great natural resources and hardworking and talented citizens. The job of your next state representative will be to listen to the concerns of the entire communities and bring leaders together and to build consensus solutions and secure needed resources from Springfield. The past several months, I've been going to voters door to door to community events to introduce myself and listen to their concerns. If elected, I'll continue to do this. Too often, segments of the communities are not listened to by those holding political offices. Even those who have held political offices for quite a long time, they don't listen to the concerns of the citizens. I will be a voice for those that have felt ignored in the past. Everyone in this room can help by encouraging everyone you know to vote, especially our young people, regardless of their political persuasion. We need to make a change in our community, and to do so, we must get everyone involved. We need to also protect pensions. Our pensions are very important. When people say that they are going to meddle with pensions, we have to be involved in that. I also pledge to listen and fight hard for all of the people of the 79th District. I will fight to bring the area its fair share of infrastructure improvements. I will fight to bring all the groups together for a plan on saving the Kankakee River. I will fight for the state to fairly fund our schools and have less reliance on property taxes. I will fight to make life-saving medication affordable, and I will fight to increase funding for mental health and drug addiction. Once again, thanks to all of you for being a part of the process.
Thank you. Mr. Snipes.
Whether you live in the rural or the urban areas of the 79th District, we must unite to stop the economic weapon of mass destruction called excessive taxation. That continues to plague and arrest the incomes of working class. Statistics shows an exodus of people leaving the state of Illinois, but I'm staying. I'd rather fight than flight. I'll fight for government transparency. I'll fight for government accountability. I'll fight for livable wages. I'll fight for tax relief. I'll fight for our environment, and I'll fight for quality education and for quality educators. I'll fight for the working class and for small businesses. I'm not leaving. I'm staying. The people of the state of Illinois, especially the 79th District, are worth fighting for. In closing, I would like to quote a poem by a famous poet, Robert Ellington Snipes. You wait and hope with bitter tears for one to come and fight your fears. Tax upon tax you cannot bear. Is there anyone in government that really cares? There is a man who shares your plight, a man named Snipes, who will stand and fight. On March 17th, with his name in sight, elect Robert Ellington Snipes to protect the people's right. God bless and good night.
We'd like to thank everyone.